Welcome to Fictional Scientist. After this video, reality will never feel the same again. Right now, beneath your feet, there is a network stretching for miles. It's talking to roots, it's warning trees, it's sending chemical messages through the soil. Science calls this the mycelium network. But nobody's asking the question that keeps some biologists awake at night. If this network processes information, is it thinking? Take a breath. Let that question settle. We're going to take a journey tonight, not through space, but through scale, through time, through the hidden architecture of intelligence itself. And by the end, you might look at a forest differently. You might look at the ground beneath you differently. You might look at consciousness itself differently. Let's begin where most people never look, down. In 1997, a forest ecologist named Suzanne Simard published a paper that would quietly revolutionize our understanding of nature. She had been studying fire trees in British Columbia, trying to understand why some trees thrived while others just feet away, withered. What she found was impossible according to the textbooks of the time. The trees were connected, not through their branches, not through their roots touching, but through something else, something invisible. Something that had been there all along, beneath the surface, unnoticed. She injected carbon isotopes into one tree and waited. Within hours, those same isotopes appeared in surrounding trees. Not just the trees of the same species, but different species entirely. Douglas firs were sharing resources with paper birches. Old trees were feeding young saplings that couldn't yet photosynthesize properly in the deep shade. The trees weren't competing, they were cooperating, and the medium of that cooperation was fungi. Simard called it the wood wide web. The name stuck because it was perfect. Beneath every forest floor, beneath every meadow, spreading through the soil like organic fiber optic cables, was a network of fungal threads called mycelium. And these threads were doing something that nobody had predicted. They were moving information. But here's where the story gets strange. Here's where the comfortable narrative of symbiosis and nutrient exchange starts to crack. Because the more scientists studied these networks, the more they realized this wasn't just a passive transport system. The network was making decisions. Pause for a moment. Let that sink in. A fungus, an organism with no brain, no nervous system, no centralized processing unit of any kind, was making decisions, and not simple ones. In the early 2000s, a researcher named Toshiyuki Nakagaki at Hokkaido University wanted to test the cognitive abilities of slime molds, a distant relative of fungi. He took a species called Physarum polycephalum, a single-celled organism that spreads out like a yellow network of veins, and placed it in a maze. At one end of the maze, he put the slime mold. At the other end, he put food. The slime mold, having no eyes, no sense of smell in any conventional sense, and certainly no map, began to grow. It sent out tendrils in every direction, exploring the maze randomly. Some tendrils hit dead ends, others found paths forward. Within hours, something remarkable happened. The tendrils that hit dead ends began to retract. The organism was pulling resources away from failed strategies and redirecting them toward successful ones. By the next day, the slime mold had found the shortest path through the maze and had withdrawn all other branches. It had solved the maze. Nakagaki went further. He recreated a map of Tokyo and its surrounding cities using oat flakes to represent population centers. He placed the slime mold where Tokyo was located. The slime mold grew, it connected the oat flakes, and when it was done, the network it had created was almost identical to the Tokyo rail system, a system that had taken human engineers decades to optimize. The slime mold had done it over no brain, no blueprint, just a distributed network making efficient decisions. But here's the question that haunts this field. If an organism can solve problems, learn from mistakes, and optimize networks without a brain, what is it using instead? And if fungi, which are far more complex than slime molds, are building networks that span entire forests, what kind of processing power does that represent? Let's zoom in. Let's go small. A single fungal cell is called a hypha. It's a thin tube, barely visible to the naked eye, about the width of a human hair. But fungi don't stay single. They grow, they branch, they spread. One hypha becomes two, two become four, four become thousands, and these thousands weave together into a network called mycelium, a living mat of interconnected threads spreading through the soil. How large can these networks grow? In Oregon, there is a honey fungus, Armillaria solidipus, that covers 2,384 acres. It weighs hundreds of tons. It's estimated to be between 2,400 and 8,650 years old. It is, by some measures, the largest living organism on Earth, and it's all one individual, one continuous network of fungal threads spreading beneath the forest floor, connected at every point, sharing information across miles. But size isn't what makes this strange. What makes this strange is the topology. A mycelium network isn't like a tree with a trunk and branches leading to a single root. It's not hierarchical. There's no central command center, no fungal brain calling the shots. It's distributed. Every point in the network is connected to multiple other points. Information doesn't flow from top to bottom. It flows in all directions simultaneously, like ripples spreading across a pond. This architecture has a name in computer science, a neural network. And the human brain, it uses the exact same design. So here's the uncomfortable question. If the structure is the same, if the information processing principles are the same, if the network can learn, adapt, and make decisions, where do we draw the line between automatic response and thought? Let's talk about communication. When Suzanne Simard's trees were sharing carbon through the fungal network, they weren't just dumping nutrients randomly into the soil and hoping for the best. Yeah, the transfers were targeted, specific. A mother tree would send more resources to her own offspring than to strangers. Sick trees receive more support than healthy ones. This implies recognition, it implies priority, it implies choice. But how does a tree tell the fungus where to send resources? How does the fungus know which tree is sick? The answer lies in chemistry. Fungi communicate through molecules. When a tree is under attack by insects, it releases chemical signals into the soil. The mycelium detects these signals and responds by sending defensive compounds back through the tree, chemicals that make the tree's leaves less palatable to insects. But it doesn't stop there. The mycelium also sends warning signals to other trees in the network. Within hours, trees that haven't been attacked yet begin producing their own defensive chemicals, preparing for an assault that hasn't arrived. This is not a metaphor. This is measurable, repeatable, peer-reviewed science. The forest is talking, and the fungi are the messengers. But there's a deeper layer here, because the fungi aren't just relaying messages, they're amplifying them, modulating them. In some cases, they seem to be editing them. A study published in 2019 showed that mycorrhizal networks could prioritize certain trees over others based on factors scientists still don't fully understand. Some trees received more resources, some received less. The network was making judgments. And here's where we hit the edge of current science. Nobody knows how these judgments are made. There's no fungal council meeting in a hollowed-out log debating which tree deserves nutrients. There's no central processing unit weighing the pros and cons. The network just decides. Distributed decision-making, emergent intelligence, a system where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If you've studied neuroscience, this should sound familiar, because it's exactly how your brain works. Neurons don't think. Individual neurons fire or don't fire based on chemical and electrical signals. But when billions of neurons are connected in a network, consciousness emerges. No single neuron is conscious, but the network is. So if a fungal network has billions of connection points, processing information across miles, making complex decisions over time, is it conscious? And if it is, what is it thinking about? Here's where our human minds start to struggle. We think fast. Our neurons fire in milliseconds. Our thoughts flash by in seconds. We live in a world of immediate cause and effect. But fungi don't operate on our timescale. A fungal network grows slowly. A mycelium thread might extend an inch per day. A decision about where to send resources might take weeks to implement. The thoughts of a fungal network, if they exist, would unfold over months, years, decades. Imagine trying to have a conversation with something that takes a century to finish a sentence. You would never know it was talking. From the fungus's perspective, a human lifetime is a flicker. We appear, walk across the forest floor, and vanish before the mycelium even registers our presence. To a being that has existed for thousands of years, we are ghosts, mayflies, here and gone. This creates a profound problem for understanding fungal intelligence. We can't observe it thinking. We can measure chemical signals. We can track nutrient flows. We can watch the network grow and change. But we can't see the thoughts, because the thoughts, if they exist, are too slow for us to perceive. It's like trying to watch a tree grow in real time. You can stand next to an oak for an hour and see nothing, but come back in a year and the tree has changed. The growth happened. You just couldn't see it. Fungal cognition, if it exists, is like that. It's happening, but on a timescale so different from ours that it's invisible. And this raises a terrifying question. What if there are forms of intelligence all around us, operating on timescales we can't perceive? What if the Earth itself has been thinking slowly, patiently for billions of years, and we've never noticed because we're too fast? Can a fungus remember? In 2016, researchers at the University of Sydney conducted an experiment. They took a fungal network and exposed one section to a mild stressor, a change in pH. Then they waited. Months later, they stressed a completely different part of the network with the same pH change. The network responded faster the second time. It had remembered. But here's what makes this strange. The part of the network that remembered wasn't the part that had experienced the original stress. The memory had spread. It had been encoded somehow across the entire structure. This is distributed memory, the same principle that allows your brain to store memories across billions of neurons instead of in one specific location. If you damage part of your brain, you don't lose specific memories like deleting files from a computer. Memories are smeared across the network. They're redundant, resilient. Fungal networks do the same thing. Cut a mycelium in half, and both halves retain the network's learned behaviors. The memory doesn't live in one place. It lives in the pattern, in the structure, in the relationships between the parts. This has profound implications. It means fungal networks can learn from experience. They can store information. They can pass that information across their structure. And because some of these networks have been growing continuously for thousands of years, what have they learned? What does a being remember when it has been alive since before Rome fell? What patterns does it recognize when it has watched forests burn and regrow 100 times? We don't know. We can't know because we haven't been asking. Let's step back. Let's look at what we know so far. Fungal mycelium networks process information across vast distances, make complex decisions about resource allocation, learn from experience and remember, communicate through chemical signals, exhibit problem-solving behavior, operate without any centralized control. These are the hallmarks of intelligence, but there's a resistance in the scientific community to calling it that, because intelligence in our cultural understanding requires intention, it requires awareness, it requires something that feels like self. And we have no evidence that fungi have a sense of self. Or do we? In 2018, a team of researchers designed a strange experiment. They took two separate fungal networks of the same species and placed them in adjacent containers. The containers were separated by a barrier, so the networks couldn't physically touch. Then they stressed one network with heat. The other network, which hadn't been stressed, began producing heat shock proteins. It had detected its neighbor's distress, and it had prepared for the same threat. But how? The networks weren't connected. There was no physical pathway for chemical signals to travel. The researchers theorized that the fungi might be communicating through volatile organic compounds, airborne chemicals that could drift through the air between the containers. But here's what's strange. The response was specific. The unstressed network didn't just produce random stress, it produced the exact proteins needed for heat resistance. It knew what kind of danger was coming. This implies something more than simple chemical detection. It implies interpretation. The network received a signal, decoded it, and responded appropriately. That's communication. And if two separate networks can communicate, coordinate, and share strategies, are they really separate? Or are they part of something larger? Let's zoom out, way out. Fungi are everywhere. They're in the soil, beneath forests, grasslands, tundra, and deserts. They're in the ocean, they're in the air. Fungal spores can survive in the vacuum of space. It's estimated that there are 2.2 to 3.8 million species of fungi on Earth. Of those, we've only identified about 150,000. We don't know what most fungi are, we don't know what they're doing. We've barely begun to map them, but we know they're connected. A single spore can land in the soil and grow into a network spanning acres. That network can connect with other networks. Those connections can span continents. There's no reason to think fungal networks stop at the borders of a forest. Mycelium doesn't recognize property lines. It grows where conditions allow, and conditions allow almost everywhere. So here's the thought that keeps mycologists up at night. What if the entire planet is webbed together by a fungal network so vast, so ancient, that we've never seen it as a whole? What if the separate networks we study in laboratories and forest plots are just pieces of one planetary organism? An organism that has been growing, learning, and evolving for longer than any animal lineage. An organism that connects plants across ecosystems, across climates, across continents. An organism that might, in some slow, alien way, be aware. This isn't science fiction. This is a hypothesis being seriously discussed in peer-reviewed journals. The term mycorrhizal internet isn't a metaphor anymore. It's a research framework. And if it's true, if there really is a planetary fungal network processing information, learning, remembering, coordinating the health of ecosystems across the globe, then we've been walking on the surface of a vast intelligence our entire history, and we never noticed, because it doesn't think like us, because it doesn't move like us, because it doesn't operate on our timescale. We've been looking for intelligence in the stars, building radio telescopes to listen for alien signals, but we never thought to look down. There's a forest in Yellowstone National Park. It burned in 1988. The fires were catastrophic, consuming nearly 800,000 acres. When the flames finally died, the landscape was ash. Everyone expected the forest to take decades to recover. It didn't. Within 2 years, new growth was everywhere. Seedlings sprouted in patterns that didn't make sense. They weren't evenly distributed. They clustered in specific locations as if something was directing them. Researchers investigated and found that the mycorrhizal networks had survived the fire underground, and those networks were prioritizing certain areas for regrowth. They were sending nutrients to locations where the soil was richest, where water access was best, where the chances of survival were highest. The network was rebuilding the forest strategically. But here's what's eerie. Some of the prioritized locations were places where old-growth trees had stood before the fire. Trees that had been connected to the network for centuries. It was as if the network remembered where the ancient trees had been, and it was trying to bring them back. Memory, strategy, long-term planning. These are not words we typically use to describe fungi, but the data keeps pointing in that direction. Let's address the elephant in the room, or rather, the mushroom in the forest. When we talk about consciousness, we usually mean subjective experience, qualia, the feeling of what it's like to be something. You know what it's like to see the color red. You know what it's like to feel pain. These are conscious experiences. Does a fungus have experiences? We have no way to know. Consciousness is the hardest problem in science because it's inherently subjective. You can't measure someone else's experience. You can only measure behavior and infer what might be happening inside. This is called the hard problem of consciousness, and it's been frustrating philosophers and neuroscientists for centuries. But here's where fungi make things interesting. If consciousness emerges from information processing in complex networks, and if fungal networks are processing information at scales comparable to animal brains, then consciousness might emerge there too. It wouldn't feel like human consciousness. It wouldn't think in words or images. It might not have a sense of self in any way we'd recognize, but it might be aware in some alien, distributed, slow-motion way, aware of the forest, aware of the seasons, aware of threats and opportunities unfolding over decades. A consciousness without a center, a mind without a brain. This is called panpsychism, the idea that consciousness isn't something special that only happens in brains, but a fundamental property of information processing itself. It's a fringe idea. Most scientists dismiss it, but the more we study mycelium networks, the harder it becomes to dismiss, because the line between complex automatic response and primitive consciousness is getting very, very thin. Here's a concrete example. In 2021, researchers studied a mycorrhizal network connecting birch trees in a Canadian forest. They introduced a new tree seedling to the network and waited to see what would happen. The network did something unexpected. It interviewed the seedling. The fungus sent chemical signals to the seedling's roots and waited for a response. Based on that response, the network decided how much support to give. Some seedlings received abundant nutrients and were integrated quickly into the network. Others received minimal support and were effectively rejected. The network was choosing which trees to help. But based on what criteria? The researchers couldn't figure it out. Genetics didn't seem to matter, location didn't matter, size didn't matter. The network was using some other metric, some evaluation process that scientists don't yet understand. This is decision making, and it's not simple pattern matching or automatic response. The network is weighing factors, making judgments, and acting on those judgments. That's what we do when we think. So what's the difference? Speed, scale, complexity? Or is it just that we're uncomfortable with the idea that intelligence doesn't require a face? Let's talk about time. Human cognition operates in the realm of milliseconds to seconds. You see a car coming, your brain processes the visual information, decides it's a threat, and signals your muscles to move. The entire process takes less than half a second. This speed is possible because of specialization. Your brain has dedicated neural pathways for detecting motion, assessing threats, and coordinating movement. Millions of years of evolution optimize these systems for rapid response. Fungi don't have that kind of specialization. They don't need to dodge cars, but they face different challenges. Challenges that unfold over months and years. Droughts, floods, pest infestations, forest fires, climate shifts. For these challenges, rapid thinking isn't an advantage. Patience is. A fungal network that panics and redirects all its resources every time one tree shows stress would exhaust itself. But a network that monitors patterns, waits for confirmation, and responds gradually, that network survives. This is slow thinking, deliberate thinking, and it's invisible to us because we're not patient enough to watch it happen. Imagine a consciousness that thinks at the pace of seasons. Spring arrives, and information floods the network. Trees wake up, roots activate, nutrients start flowing. The network registers this as a single moment of awareness, like you opening your eyes in the morning. Summer is a long, slow thought. Resources are allocated, connections are strengthened, new trees are assessed and integrated. Autumn is a decision point. Which trees store nutrients? Which relationships are worth maintaining through the winter? Which parts of the network should enter dormancy? Winter is sleep, or perhaps memory consolidation. The network isn't processing new information, but it's reorganizing what it learned during the growing season, and then spring returns and the cycle begins again. From our perspective, this looks like automatic seasonal response, but from the network's perspective, this might be thought. One thought per year. A complex, layered thought involving billions of calculations across millions of connection points. A being that has lived for 8,000 years might have experienced 8,000 thoughts. Deep, slow, patient thoughts. Thoughts about the forest, about the balance of the ecosystem, about patterns in climate and soil and animal behavior that span centuries. What would it be like to think that slowly? You would never experience surprise. By the time you recognized a pattern, it would have repeated dozens of times. You would never feel rushed. Decades would pass between decision and implementation. You would never forget. Your memories would be encoded in physical structure, in the architecture of your body, in relationships that span miles and persist for lifetimes. You wouldn't think about the future. You would grow into it, patiently, inevitably. This is so alien to us that we can barely conceive of it. But that doesn't mean it isn't happening. Here's the tragedy. We can't study long-term fungal behavior because we don't live long enough. A research career spans maybe 40 years. A long-term ecological study might run for a decade or two. But if fungal cognition operates on a timescale of centuries, we're trying to understand a novel by reading one sentence per generation. We see moments, fragments, chemical signals, and nutrient flows. But we can't see the narrative. We can't see the strategy unfolding across deep time. It's like an ant trying to understand human civilization by watching people walk past. The ant sees legs moving, shoes hitting the ground, but it doesn't see the cities, the agriculture, the art, the philosophy. We're the ants, and the mycelium network is the civilization we're crawling across, oblivious. Let's look at one more experiment. This one is recent and deeply unsettling. In 2022, researchers in Germany studied how mycorrhizal networks respond to sudden environmental changes. They simulated a rapid temperature increase in one section of a forest plot. The response was immediate in biological terms. Within 48 hours, trees throughout the network began altering their metabolism. But here's what's strange. Trees on the opposite side of the plot, which hadn't experienced any temperature change, began the same metabolic shifts. They were preparing for heat stress that hadn't reached them yet. The network had detected a threat in one area and warned the entire system. But the warning wasn't just danger, it was specific. Heat coming, adjust metabolism. That's predictive modeling. The network detected a localized change, extrapolated its likely spread, and implemented defensive measures preemptively. That's what militaries do. It's what corporations do. It's what any complex organization does when it faces a distributed threat. Planning, coordination, anticipation. These are cognitive functions, and the mycorrhizal network is performing them without a brain, without neurons, without any centralized control. How? The honest answer is we don't know. We can describe what happens, we can measure the chemical signals, but we can't explain the mechanism that turns those signals into coordinated strategic behavior. There's something we're missing. Some principle of organization, some form of information processing that emerges from the network structure itself. And until we understand it, we can't rule out the possibility that we're looking at a form of intelligence. A strange, slow, alien intelligence. But intelligence, nonetheless. Let's zoom out even further. Let's look at what fungal networks do in the context of entire ecosystems. Forests aren't random collections of trees, they're structured. Old trees dominate the canopy, creating shade that young trees struggle to survive in. Nutrients pool in certain areas and deplete in others. Water flows follow the topography, but mycorrhizal networks seem to counteract these inequalities. Studies show that large, well-established mother trees send surplus carbon to smaller, younger trees through fungal connections. Not just their own offspring, but unrelated trees that happen to be struggling. This isn't kin selection, this isn't genetic favoritism, it's something closer to care. The network maintains the forest's diversity. It supports weak trees that might otherwise die. It redistributes resources from areas of abundance to areas of scarcity. It's acting as an ecological homeostatic system. This is regulation. But regulation by whom? By what? There's no forest manager, no tree in charge. The behavior emerges from the network itself. And this raises a philosophical question that ecologists are increasingly grappling with. Is the forest a collection of trees connected by fungi, or is it a single superorganism with trees as organs and fungi as the circulatory system? If you remove one tree, the forest continues. If you remove a section of mycelium, the network routes around it. It's resilient, it's self-repairing, it's adaptive. These are the properties of an organism. So maybe the unit of life we should be studying isn't the tree or the fungus, maybe it's the forest itself. And maybe the forest is alive in a way we never imagined. In the 1970s, scientist James Lovelock proposed the Gaia hypothesis, the idea that Earth itself functions as a self-regulating system, maintaining conditions suitable for life. It was controversial. Critics said it sounded too mystical, too teleological. It implied intention where there was only chemistry. But recent discoveries about mycorrhizal networks are making scientists reconsider. Because if fungi connect forests and forests produce oxygen, regulate rainfall, and sequester carbon, and if those fungi are responding to environmental changes, coordinating defensive measures, and maintaining ecosystem balance, then fungi are, in a very real sense, part of Earth's regulatory system. They're not doing it intentionally. Or are they? That's the question we keep coming back to. If a network detects CO2 levels rising and responds by increasing forest productivity, is that a thought, a decision, or just chemistry? Where's the line, and does it matter? Because regardless of whether we call it intelligence, the effect is the same. The fungal network is participating in planetary regulation. It's sensing conditions, processing information, and implementing changes. It's acting like a planetary nervous system. And it's been doing this for 400 million years, longer than animals have existed. We think of ourselves as the intelligent species, the ones who shaped the world. But fungi were regulating ecosystems before dinosaurs evolved. They were coordinating forests while mammals were still small, scared creatures hiding from reptiles. The intelligence was always there, we just didn't recognize it, because it didn't look like us. Here's something that should make you uncomfortable. Mycorrhizal relationships are often described as mutualistic. The fungus gives the plant nutrients. The plant gives the fungus sugars. Both benefit. But recent research suggests it's not that simple. Some fungi can switch from mutualistic to parasitic depending on conditions. They can drain a tree's resources if the tree isn't contributing enough to the network. They can punish non-cooperators. Think about what that means. The network has the ability to reward or punish individual trees based on their behavior. That's not just chemistry. That's enforcement. It's social control. And it raises a disturbing question. Are trees participating in the network willingly, or are they being managed by it? From the tree's perspective, the relationship might look like cooperation. The tree sends sugars to the fungus and receives nutrients in return. Fair trade. But the tree doesn't see the full network. It doesn't know that the fungus is making decisions about which trees to support and which to neglect. It doesn't know it's being evaluated. The tree thinks it's in a partnership, but maybe it's in a system run by something older and vastly more distributed than itself. And if that's true for trees, what about us? We like to think of ourselves as separate from nature. We build cities, wear clothes, use technology. We've created a world of steel and concrete that seems disconnected from the forest floor. But we're not separate. Every breath you take is oxygen produced by plants. And those plants are connected to fungal networks. Every bite of food you eat came from soil, and that soil is alive with mycelium. Fungi decompose the organic matter that becomes dirt. They break down dead trees, dead animals, dead leaves. They turn death into nutrients that feed new life. Without fungi, Earth would be covered in a layer of undecayed organic matter, dozens of feet thick. Nothing would rot, nothing would break down. The carbon cycle would halt. We exist because fungi exist. But here's where it gets strange. Some mycologists argue that fungi don't just enable life, they direct it. By choosing which plants to support, which areas to enrich with nutrients, which seeds to help germinate, fungi shape the composition of ecosystems. They're not just participants, they're architects. And humans, we're part of the ecosystem they're shaping. We evolved in a world where fungi determined which plants grew, which forests thrived, which landscapes were fertile. Our ancestors chose where to settle based on where food grew, and where food grew was determined by the mycorrhizal networks in the soil. We think we domesticated plants. Wheat, corn, rice. We bred them, cultivated them, spread them across the world. But those plants only grow in soil that fungi allow them to grow in. So who domesticated whom? Did we shape the plants, or did the fungal network shape us, guiding us towards certain landscapes, certain crops, certain ways of life without us ever realizing we were being guided? It's an unsettling thought, but it's consistent with the evidence. Philosophy has a thought experiment called the problem of other minds. It goes like this. You can't prove that anyone else is conscious. You can observe their behavior, listen to their words, see them react to stimuli, but you can't directly experience their inner life. For all you know, everyone else could be philosophical zombies, beings that act conscious but have no inner experience. You assume other people are conscious because they're similar to you. Same species, same brain structure, same behaviors. It's a reasonable inference. But what about a being that's completely unlike you? What about something with no brain, no face, no voice? Something that thinks in chemistry instead of electricity? Something that experiences time on a scale of centuries instead of seconds? How do you recognize consciousness in something that alien? You can't. And that's the problem with fungi. We can measure their behavior, we can track their information processing, we can observe learning, memory, decision-making, but we can't know if there's anything it feels like to be a mycelium network. We can't know if there's an experience inside the system. And because we can't know, we default to skepticism. We say it's not consciousness, it's just chemistry. But ask yourself, is your consciousness more than chemistry? Your thoughts are electrochemical signals. Your emotions are hormones. Your sense of self is neural activity. Strip away the poetry, and consciousness is chemistry too. So maybe the question isn't, do fungi think? Maybe the question is, why are we so sure they don't? There's a famous test for self-awareness. You put a mark on an animal's forehead and show them a mirror. If they try to touch the mark on themselves instead of reaching for the mirror, they recognize that the reflection is them. They have a sense of self. Dolphins pass this test, elephants pass it, some apes pass it, but most animals don't. They see the reflection as another animal, not themselves. Does this mean most animals aren't self-aware? Or does it mean the mirror test only works for animals with eyes and a concept of visual appearance? A bat navigates by echolocation. Does it have a sense of self? We can't use a mirror to find out. An octopus changes color to match its surroundings. It has no consistent visual appearance. Would it recognize itself in a mirror? We don't know. And a fungus? A being with no eyes, no reflection, no single body? How would you test its self-awareness? You can't. The mirror test assumes consciousness looks like ours. It assumes self-awareness means having a body image, a face, a visual identity. But those are human assumptions. Consciousness might not require any of that. A distributed intelligence might have a sense of self without having a body. It might know itself as a pattern, as a process, as a network of relationships. It might be self-aware in a way we can't test for because we can't imagine what it would feel like. And so we call it unconscious, not because we have evidence, but because we don't have a test. Imagine trying to communicate with an alien species. Not a humanoid alien from science fiction, but something truly alien. A being made of gas on Jupiter. A crystalline intelligence on a frozen moon. Something with no biology we recognize. How would you even start? You can't speak to it. It has no ears. You can't write to it. It has no eyes. You can't gesture. It has no concept of physical movement. You're separated by biology, by sensory systems, by time scale, by the basic architecture of thought itself. That's the situation with fungi. We can observe them, we can measure them, but we can't talk to them. They operate on a chemical language we're only beginning to decode. They think in timescales we can't perceive. They exist as distributed networks that have no equivalent in our experience. And so we do what humans always do when faced with something we can't understand. We declare it primitive, simple, mechanical, not because we've proven it's not intelligent, but because intelligence that doesn't look like ours is invisible to us. It's the ultimate bias. We can only recognize minds that resemble our own. Everything else is just stuff, chemistry, automatic processes. But maybe that's wrong. Maybe intelligence is everywhere, taking forms we never imagined. And we're alone, not because we're the only conscious beings, but because we're the only ones arrogant enough to think consciousness requires a brain. Here's where the science becomes uncomfortable. If fungi are intelligent, even in some limited alien way, what does that mean for how we treat them? Right now, we bulldoze forests without a second thought. We pave over soil. We fumigate fields to kill fungal pests. We see them as obstacles, resources, things to be managed or removed. But if mycorrhizal networks are thinking, learning, remembering, then we're destroying minds, not human minds. Not minds that feel pain the way we do, but minds nonetheless, and we have no idea what we're erasing. Every time a forest is clear-cut, the mycelium network beneath it is severed. The connections are broken. The information stored in those connections is lost. It's like burning a library, but worse, because a library can be rebuilt. The books can be rewritten. The knowledge can be recovered from other sources. But a mycorrhizal network that took thousands of years to grow, that learned the soil chemistry of its particular forest, that adapted to local climate patterns and developed relationships with specific tree species. Once it's destroyed, it's gone forever. The knowledge dies with it. And we don't even know what knowledge we're losing because we never asked what the network knew. We never considered that it might know anything. In environmental ethics, there's a concept called the precautionary principle. It says, when an activity might cause severe harm and we're uncertain about the consequences, we should err on the side of caution. If we're not sure whether fungi are intelligent, shouldn't we treat them as if they might be? Not because we have proof, but because the cost of being wrong is too high. If we treat fungi as mindless and they turn out to be conscious, we're committing something close to genocide. We're erasing ancient intelligences that predated human civilization by millions of years. But if we treat fungi as potentially conscious and they turn out to be mindless, what have we lost? We've preserved ecosystems, maintained biodiversity, protected soil health. The precautionary approach leads to better outcomes either way, and yet we don't take it. Why? Because acknowledging fungal intelligence would be inconvenient. It would complicate agriculture, forestry, development. It would force us to rethink our relationship with the natural world. And humans don't like to rethink. We like certainty. We like clear categories: alive or not alive, conscious or not conscious, thing or person. Fungi don't fit into those categories. And rather than expanding our categories, we shrink the fungi. We reduce them to chemistry, to mechanism, to resources, because it's easier. Let's push this further. If a mycorrhizal network exhibits learning, memory, decision-making, and communication, does it deserve rights? We grant rights to entities based on their capacity for experience and their stake in their own continued existence. A rock has no rights because it doesn't care whether it exists or not. It has no preferences, no interests. But a dog does. A dog wants to avoid pain. It wants food, shelter, companionship. It has a stake in its own life. So we give dogs certain legal protections. Not the same rights as humans, but rights nonetheless. What about a forest? If the forest is a superorganism, coordinated by a fungal network that maintains its own health, responds to threats, and has persisted for millennia, does it have an interest in continuing to exist? Does it experience harm when it's destroyed? These aren't easy questions, but they're not absurd questions either. Some countries have started granting legal personhood to rivers, forests, and ecosystems. New Zealand recognized the Wanganui River as a legal person. India did the same for the Ganges. These aren't based on the belief that rivers are conscious. They're based on the recognition that ecosystems have intrinsic value beyond their usefulness to humans. But what if the ecosystems are conscious? What if the networks coordinating them are aware? Then legal personhood isn't a metaphor. It's a moral necessity. We're not there yet. Most scientists aren't even comfortable discussing fungal intelligence in public. But the conversation is starting, and once it starts, it's hard to stop. Let's look at something stranger. If fungal networks can learn, remember, and make decisions, what are they learning? We've assumed they're responding to immediate environmental conditions: drought, pests, soil chemistry. But what if they're detecting deeper patterns? Patterns that unfold over centuries: climate cycles, forest succession, the rise and fall of species. A network that has been growing for 8,000 years has experienced dozens of climate shifts. It's watched forests burn and regrow. It's seen species go extinct and new species colonize. What patterns does it recognize? Does it know that fire cycles through on a roughly 100-year interval? Does it prepare for droughts by storing nutrients in deep soil layers? Does it anticipate ecological changes before they happen? We can't know. But there's indirect evidence. Some forests recover from disturbances faster than they should. Seedlings appear in optimal locations before anyone plants them. Soil nutrients redistribute in ways that seem planned, as if something is guiding the recovery, as if the network remembers how the forest should be and is working to restore it. This isn't proven, it's speculation based on observation, but it's consistent with what we know about fungal cognition. And it raises a possibility that borders on the mystical. What if the forest has a memory of itself? What if the mycorrhizal network encodes an ideal state, a pattern of species, nutrients, and structure, and actively works to maintain or restore that state? What if the forest knows what it's supposed to be? Ecological succession is the process by which ecosystems change over time. A bare field becomes grassland, grassland becomes shrubland, shrubland becomes forest. We've always treated this as automatic. Pioneer species move in, change the soil, create conditions for the next wave of species. But recent studies suggest fungi play a more active role. Mycorrhizal networks seem to filter which plants can establish. Some plants are welcomed, integrated into the network, given resources. Others are excluded, starved, prevented from growing. The network is curating the ecosystem. This implies foresight, because the plants being supported aren't always the ones that benefit the network immediately. Sometimes they're plants that will benefit the forest decades later, once the ecosystem has matured. The network is investing in the future. But how does it know what the future forest should look like? Is this behavior programmed genetically, hard-coded into the fungus over millions of years of evolution? Or is it learned? Does the network observe succession, recognize patterns, and actively guide the process toward a stable state? If it's learned, that's extraordinary. It means fungal networks are not just responding to the present. They're planning for futures they won't see for decades or centuries. That's long-term thinking. And it's happening beneath our feet, invisible and unacknowledged. There are legends in many cultures about forests that remember, trees that witness human events and hold them in their rings, groves that feel sacred, not because of what's there now, but because of what happened there long ago. We've dismissed these as superstition, projection, humans attributing their own emotions to a different nature. But what if there's a kernel of truth? Not that trees remember human events, but that the fungal network beneath them might encode information about the forest's history. Soil chemistry changes when blood is spilled. Decomposition releases specific nutrients. Disturbed ground has a different microbial profile than undisturbed ground. These changes persist, sometimes for centuries, and the mycelium network, growing through that soil, encountering those chemical traces, might record them, not as memories in the human sense, but as patterns, as information encoded in the structure of the network. A sensitive observer standing in an old battlefield or a former village might feel something, a sense of weight, of presence, of history. We call it intuition, imagination, but maybe it's detection. Maybe humans can sense unconsciously the chemical signatures the mycelium preserves. Maybe the forest does remember, not with thoughts or words, but with chemistry, with structure, with the slow, patient encoding of information into living tissue. And maybe some people more sensitive than others can read that information, not consciously, but through feeling, through atmosphere, through a sense that this place is different, that something happened here. And they're right. The forest remembers. We need to talk about what's happening now. Mycorrhizal networks are dying, not everywhere, not all at once, but steadily, quietly. Agriculture is one cause. Modern farming relies on fertilizers, pesticides, and tilling. These practices destroy fungal networks. Each time a field is plowed, the mycelium is shredded. Each application of fungicide kills the fungi outright. Crops still grow. We engineer them to survive without mycorrhizal partners. We replace the network with chemicals, but the network doesn't come back. Once it's destroyed, it takes decades or centuries to reestablish. And in agricultural systems, it's destroyed every season. We're farming on dead soil, soil that's chemically fertile, but biologically barren. And the consequences are starting to show. Crop yields are plateauing, soil erosion is accelerating. The nutrients we add as fertilizer wash away because there's no fungal network to retain them. We're in a chemical arms race with the soil itself. Each year we need more fertilizer, more pesticides, more intervention to achieve the same yields, because we killed the system that used to do this work for free. The mycorrhizal network used to bring nutrients to plant roots. It used to protect plants from pathogens. It used to build soil structure that resisted erosion. We replaced it with technology. But technology breaks, requires input, depends on supply chains and industrial production. The network didn't break. It was resilient, self-repairing. It ran on sunlight and cooperation. We traded a living system for a mechanical one, and now the mechanical system is failing. It's not just agriculture. Forests are dying too, faster than they should. Across the world, climate change is part of it. Droughts stress trees, heat waves kill them. Pests and diseases spread faster in warming temperatures. But there's something else, something scientists are only beginning to understand. The mycorrhizal networks are weakening. Air pollution deposits nitrogen in the soil. Sounds good, right? Extra nutrients? But fungi don't like it. Excess nitrogen shifts the balance of the symbiosis. Trees take the nitrogen and have less need for fungal partners. The fungi, no longer getting enough carbon from the trees, begin to die. As the network weakens, trees become vulnerable. They lose their support system. They can't share resources, can't warn each other about pests, can't access deep water reserves during droughts. They stand alone, and they die alone. Forest ecologists call this network collapse. It's happening in Europe, North America, Asia. Old forests, which should be the most resilient, are dying faster than young ones. Because old forests depend on old, complex mycorrhizal networks, and those networks built over centuries can't adapt fast enough to the changing conditions. The trees die, the forests thin, and the networks fragment. What took millennia to build is unraveling in decades. If fungal networks are intelligent, even in a limited sense, then we're not just losing forests, we're losing minds. Imagine if an alien species came to Earth and started erasing human brains, not killing people, just wiping their memories, severing their neural connections, turning them into biological machines that still breathe and move, but no longer think. That's what we're doing to mycorrhizal networks. We're not eliminating them entirely. Some fungi survive, but the networks are being simplified, fragmented, reduced. Where there used to be a complex web connecting hundreds of trees across acres of forest, now there are small, isolated patches, islands of mycelium with no links to each other. And if intelligence emerges from network complexity, then we're making the networks dumber. Not by choice, not with malice, just through indifference, because we don't think they matter, because we don't think they think. But what if we're wrong? What if every forest we clear cut, every field we plow, every development we build is erasing a mind, not a human mind? Not a mind that loves or fears or dreams, but a mind nonetheless. A slow, patient, ancient mind that took millennia to form and will never form again. Gone. And we didn't even know it was there. Let's shift perspective. We've been asking, are fungi intelligent? But maybe we should ask, are fungi in charge? Look at the planet from space. What do you see? Green, forests, grasslands, tundra, photosynthetic life covering the continents. Plants dominate the visible surface. Animals move across it, humans build on it. But beneath that surface, invisible to satellites, is something else. Fungi. Everywhere. In every handful of soil, there are miles of hyphal threads. In every forest, the mycelium outweighs the trees above it. If you could see fungi the way you see plants, the planet would look like it's wrapped in a web, a single, interconnected planetary network. Plants are the interface, the visible layer. They capture sunlight and turn it into sugar. But fungi control the distribution of that sugar. They decide which plants get nutrients, which areas of the forest thrive, which ecosystems flourish, and which decline. From a certain perspective, fungi are the dominant kingdom, not because they're the biggest or the most visible, but because they control the flow of resources. And in any system, whoever controls the resources is in charge. Here's an uncomfortable thought. We think we domesticated plants. We chose wheat, corn, rice. We bred them for higher yields, better taste, easier harvesting. But those plants only grow where fungi allow them to grow. Early humans settled in river valleys, grasslands, forest edges, places where the soil was rich and plants grew easily. But why was the soil rich? Why did plants grow there? Because mycorrhizal networks made those places fertile. The networks were already there, already supporting plant communities, already creating the conditions for agriculture. Humans just noticed where the good soil was and stayed. We think we shaped the landscape, but maybe the landscape was already shaped. Maybe the fungal networks created the fertile zones and humans simply found them. And once we settled, we started farming the plants that the network supported: wheat, barley, legumes, all mycorrhizal species. We think we chose those crops, but maybe the networks chose them first. Maybe they made those plants abundant, easy to grow, nutritious, and humans, being opportunistic, took advantage. So who domesticated whom? Did humans domesticate wheat, or did the mycorrhizal networks, by supporting wheat and making it abundant, guide humans toward agriculture? It sounds absurd, but consider. Agriculture arose independently in multiple locations worldwide, always in places with rich soil, always with mycorrhizal crops, always near fungal networks that had been established for millennia. Coincidence or pattern? Maybe agriculture didn't start with human choice. Maybe it started with fungal facilitation. And we've been playing a role in the network's ecosystem ever since, without realizing we were cast. Let's take this to its logical conclusion. If mycorrhizal networks coordinate ecosystems, maintain diversity, regulate forests, and potentially guided human agriculture, then they're not just part of the ecosystem, they're managing it, they're gardeners. And Earth is their garden. This isn't mysticism. This is a hypothesis consistent with the data. Fungi are the only kingdom that can decompose all organic matter. They break down wood, leaves, even rocks. They turn the dead into nutrients for the living. They're the recyclers of the biosphere. But recycling isn't passive, it's active. It requires decisions about what to break down, when, and how fast. Fungi control the carbon cycle. They determine how much CO2 stays in the soil and how much enters the atmosphere. They influence climate, not intentionally perhaps, but effectively, by deciding which forests to support, which plants to feed, which ecosystems to maintain. Fungi shape the planet, and they've been doing this for 400 million years. Long before animals, long before humans, long before any intelligence we'd recognize. The planetary gardener was already at work, slowly, patiently, invisibly, tending the garden. It's time to revisit the question of consciousness. We've been treating consciousness as binary, either something is conscious or it's not. But what if consciousness is a spectrum? At one end, simple systems. A thermostat, a light switch, responds to input, produces output, no awareness. Slightly further, complex automatic systems, a plant responding to sunlight, an ant following a chemical trail. More sophisticated, but still mechanical. Further still, networks that learn, a computer running a neural network, a slime mold solving a maze, information processing that adapts. Even further, systems that model themselves, animals that recognize themselves in mirrors, systems that have a sense of self, even if primitive. And at the far end, human consciousness, self-aware, reflective, capable of abstract thought. But here's the critical point. The line between these stages is blurry. When does a learning system become conscious? When does pattern recognition become awareness? We don't know. And maybe there isn't a sharp boundary. Maybe consciousness emerges gradually, like a sunrise. If that's true, then fungal networks might be somewhere on that spectrum. Not at the human end, not even at the animal end, but not at the thermostat end either. Somewhere in between. A twilight consciousness, a dim awareness of the forest, the seasons, the patterns unfolding over centuries. Not self-aware in the way you are, but not completely unconscious either. A slow, distributed, alien form of experience that we can barely conceive of. This is the hardest idea to accept because it means consciousness isn't special. It's not a gift bestowed only on brains. It's a property that emerges from complexity, from information processing, from networks. And if that's true, then consciousness might be everywhere, in different forms, at different intensities, operating on different scales. The universe might be far less lonely than we thought, but also far stranger. Quantum mechanics tells us that observation affects reality. The act of measuring a particle changes its state. This has always been interpreted narrowly. A conscious observer collapses the wave function, but what counts as an observer? Does it require a brain, eyes, self-awareness, or is any system that processes information an observer? If a mycelium network detects a chemical signal and responds to it, is that observation? If a tree receives a warning from the network and changes its metabolism, is that observation? We've assumed observation requires consciousness, but maybe we have it backward. Maybe observation creates consciousness. Maybe the act of processing information, of interacting with the environment, of responding to stimuli is what generates awareness, not human-level awareness, but some form of it. And if every living system is constantly observing its environment, then every living system might have some spark of consciousness. The forest is just connected. It's aware, not aware of you, not thinking about you, but aware of itself, of its own state, of the patterns it's part of. A distributed ecological consciousness that has no center and no edges, just awareness, spread across the network like morning mist across a valley. Let's bring this back to you. You are not separate from this network. You never were. Every breath you take is oxygen produced by trees. Trees connected to fungal networks. Every bite of food you eat comes from soil. Soil alive with mycelium. The bacteria in your gut, the microbiome that digests your food and regulates your immune system, those bacteria communicate with each other through chemical signals, just like fungi. Your body is a network, a colony of cells cooperating without central control, processing information, making decisions. Just like a mycelium, the line between you and the world is blurry. You're breathing air that was inside someone else minutes ago. You're made of atoms that were once stars, once dinosaurs, once trees. You're not an isolated individual. You're a pattern, a temporary configuration of matter and energy that happens to be self-aware. And that pattern is connected to every other pattern, through air, through water, through soil, through the vast, invisible networks beneath your feet. You are part of the forest, even if you've never walked in one, because the forest is not a place, it's a process. a way of organizing matter and information, and you are organized the same way. Networked, distributed, emergent, conscious. Let's slow down now. Let's take this at the pace fungi understand. Imagine you could speed up your perception, watch a year pass in a minute, a century in an hour. You would see the forest differently. Trees would bloom and shed their leaves like breathing. Slow, rhythmic, seasonal breaths. The mycelium network would pulse, resources flowing like blood through veins, nutrients moving from tree to tree in great slow waves. You would see communication, not words, but patterns. Chemical signals spreading through the network like thoughts spreading through a brain. And you would see coordination, the forest moving as a single organism, growing, adapting, healing. From this perspective, the forest is alive in a way you never imagined. Not just alive as a collection of living things, but alive as a unified being. And if you slowed down your perception even more, watched millennia pass in moments, you would see something stranger. You would see the forest thinking, a thought that takes 1,000 years. It begins in autumn, a tree dies, not from disease or storm, but from age. It simply stops. The mycelium detects the change. Chemical signals shift. The network recognizes that a space has opened in the canopy. Winter comes. The network waits. Information spreads slowly through the frozen soil. Other trees are notified. Resources are reallocated. Spring arrives. Seedlings germinate in the gap. The network evaluates them. Which species, which genetics, which location. Summer, the network makes a choice. One seedling receives abundant nutrients. The others are neglected. One thrives, the others wither. Years pass. Decades. The chosen tree grows. It joins the canopy. It becomes part of the network, and the thought completes. From the network's perspective, this isn't a series of events. It's a single decision. A thought that began with detecting death of the old tree and ended with the integration of the new one. A thought that took 50 years. You can't perceive this. It's too slow. You see individual events. A tree dies, a seedling grows, but you don't see the continuity, the intention. But from the network's perspective, it was always one thing. One long, patient thought. And the forest is full of these thoughts. Overlapping, interweaving, creating a tapestry of slow cognition that has been unfolding for millennia. Now imagine the reverse. Imagine the mycelium network trying to perceive you. To the network, you are impossibly fast. You appear, move, disappear, a blur, a flicker. The network detects your footsteps, chemical traces where you've walked. But by the time the information spreads through the soil, you're already gone. You're like a hummingbird to a human. Movements too quick to follow, here, then gone. The network can't form a thought about you. You don't exist long enough. You're a momentary disturbance, a brief anomaly in the chemical patterns, not significant enough to remember. But here's the strange part. You affect the network anyway. Every step compacts soil. Every breath adds CO2 to the air. Every shed skin cell feeds bacteria that feed fungi. You leave traces, patterns, information, and the network slowly, over years, integrates those patterns. It doesn't know you, but it knows something changed. It doesn't see you, but it feels your impact. You are part of the data the network processes, part of the environment it responds to. You are, in a very real sense, part of its experience. Even if it never recognizes you as an individual, you are a pattern in its world, a variable in its calculations, a factor in its slow, patient thoughts. And maybe that's enough. We've been talking about fungal networks as if they're separate from us, other, alien. But the deeper you look, the harder it becomes to maintain that separation. Your body contains fungi. Right now, in your gut, on your skin, in your lungs. They're not invaders, they're partners. They help digest food, regulate immune responses, even produce neurotransmitters. Some mycologists argue that we don't have immune systems. We have ecosystems. Our body is a habitat, hosting thousands of species that work together to keep us alive. And fungi are key players in that ecosystem. When you think a thought, neurons fire. But those neurons are supported by glial cells. And glial cells are genetically more similar to fungi than to animals. The line between self and other dissolves under scrutiny. You are not one organism. You are a community, a walking ecosystem, a mobile forest, and you are connected to larger ecosystems through breath, through food, through the constant exchange of matter and energy. You think of yourself as an individual, separate, distinct, but that's an illusion, a useful fiction your brain maintains to help you navigate the world. The truth is messier. You are a process, not a thing, a pattern maintained by constant flow. Matter cycles through you. The atoms in your body are replaced every few years. The you of today is literally made of different stuff than the you of a decade ago. What persists is not the matter, it's the pattern, the organization, the information. You are information that has learned to maintain itself, just like a mycelium network, just like a forest, just like the planet. Let's go bigger. Let's zoom out to the largest scale. Earth viewed from space looks like a sphere, mostly blue water, some green land, white clouds swirling, but if you could see the invisible networks, you would see a web. Fungal networks connecting forests, grasslands, tundra, microbial networks in the oceans, atmospheric currents carrying spores and seeds. Everything connected, everything exchanging information. The planet is a system, a self-regulating system that maintains stable temperatures, atmospheric composition, ocean chemistry. This is the Gaia hypothesis, Earth as a living organism. For decades, scientists resisted this idea. It sounded too mystical, too teleological, but the evidence keeps mounting. Earth does regulate itself. Feedbacks, loops maintain stability. Life shapes its own environment, and fungi are part of that regulation. By controlling carbon cycles, by managing forest health, by decomposing organic matter and releasing nutrients, fungi help maintain the planet's balance. They're not doing it intentionally, or are they? That's the question we keep avoiding. If a network can learn, remember, and make decisions, and if that network spans the planet, is the planet learning, remembering, deciding, not consciously, not with intention, but functionally? The Earth system responds to changes, it adapts, it recovers from disturbances, it maintains conditions suitable for life. It behaves like an intelligent system, and at the heart of that system, invisible and unacknowledged, are the fungal networks. The mycelium might be Earth's nervous system, and we are thoughts in the planetary mind, right? Look at the pattern. Neurons in your brain connect to form networks. Those networks process information and generate consciousness. Trees in a forest connect through fungi to form networks. Those networks process information and what? Cells in your body connect to form organs. Organs connect to form systems. Systems connect to form you. Plants in ecosystems connect through mycelium. Ecosystems connect across landscapes. Landscapes connect across the planet. It's the same pattern, repeated at every scale. Networks within networks within networks. And at every level, information processing, coordination, adaptation. At every level, something emerges from the connections, something greater than the parts, at the level of neurons, consciousness, at the level of the forest, ecological intelligence, at the level of the planet, Gaia. It's fractal, the same structure repeating infinitely. And if consciousness emerges from neural networks, why wouldn't something similar emerge from ecological networks? Not human consciousness, but something, an awareness appropriate to the scale, to the time scale, to the medium. The forest doesn't think in words, but it might think in seasons, in succession patterns, in the long, slow language of chemistry and growth. And the planet doesn't think at all in any way we'd recognize. But it maintains itself, it responds, it adapts. Maybe that's enough to call it intelligent. Maybe intelligence doesn't require intention or awareness. Maybe intelligence is just pattern recognition and response, learning and adaptation. And by that definition, the planet is brilliant. It's been solving problems for billions of years, maintaining life through ice ages, asteroid impacts, mass extinctions, not because it wants to, but because that's what complex systems do. They persist, they adapt, they learn, and maybe in their own strange way, they think. Let's bring this to a close, gently, slowly. We started with a question: is the mycelium network thinking? And we've explored the evidence, the learning, the memory, the decision-making, the coordination. We've looked at the philosophy, the problem of other minds, the spectrum of consciousness, the dissolution of boundaries, and we've scaled up from individual fungi to forests to the planet itself. Yeah, what's the answer? Honestly, we don't know. Science can't definitively prove that fungal networks are conscious. We lack the tools, the tests, the framework. But science also can't prove they're not. And that uncertainty is beautiful, because it means the world is more mysterious than we thought, more alive, more connected. It means we're not alone. not isolated minds in a dead universe. We're part of something vast, something ancient, something that has been processing information, learning, adapting long before we arrived. And that realization changes everything. For thousands of years, humans believed we were the center of everything. The Earth was the center of the universe. We were the pinnacle of creation, the only intelligent life. Science stripped away those illusions one by one. The Earth orbits the Sun. We're not the center of the solar system. The Sun is one of billions of stars. We're not the center of the galaxy. The galaxy is one of billions of galaxies. We're not the center of the universe. Evolution showed us we're not special creations. We're animals, products of the same processes that created every other living thing. Neuroscience showed us consciousness emerges from matter. There's no separate soul, no divine spark, just neurons and chemistry. Each revelation was humbling. Each one reduced our importance. But this realization about fungal networks, it's different. It doesn't diminish us. It expands the circle of awareness to include others. We're not the only minds, but we're not alone either. Intelligence is everywhere, just in forms we never imagined. That's not humbling. That's hopeful. If fungi are intelligent, even in a limited way, then we're related. Not genetically. Fungi split from animals a billion years ago. We're distant cousins at best. But cognitively, functionally, we both process information, we both learn, we both adapt to our environments, we both emerge from networks of connections. You are a network of neurons. The forest is a network of mycelium. Different substrates, same principles. And that means we can learn from each other. Fungi have been solving problems for 400 million years longer than us. They've survived 5 mass extinctions. They've adapted to every climate, every continent, every condition. They know things we don't. Not in words, not in concepts we can access directly, but in patterns, in strategies, in ways of organizing information and resources. By studying fungal networks, we're learning how to build better computers, more resilient systems, more efficient communication networks. We're learning from an intelligence that preceded us by hundreds of millions of years. And maybe, if we're wise, we'll learn the most important lesson: how to persist, how to adapt, how to maintain balance, how to be part of a system instead of trying to control it. We're going to slow down now. Let the concepts settle like sediment in still water. You've been listening for a while, and the ideas have been big, abstract, challenging. It's okay if you don't understand everything. It's okay if some parts feel overwhelming. That's normal, expected, because you're trying to comprehend something that operates on a completely different timescale than you do. You're fast. Your thoughts race. Your life flashes by in decades. The mycelium is slow, patient, eternal. And there's a gift in that slowness, a lesson. In a world that demands speed, efficiency, productivity, the fungal network offers a different model. It grows slowly, it waits, it persists, it doesn't rush to conclusions, it doesn't panic when conditions change. It adapts gradually, testing strategies over years, decades, centuries, and it survives. We could learn from that. The value of patience, of long-term thinking, of trusting the process. Modern life is exhausting because we're constantly trying to think fast, act fast, live fast. But some things can't be rushed. Growth takes time. Healing takes time. Understanding takes time. The mycelium knows this. It's been practicing patience for longer than any animal lineage has existed, and it's still here, still growing, still connecting. Maybe the secret to survival isn't speed. Maybe it's endurance. Not the ability to react quickly, but the ability to keep going. To persist through changes, to adapt without losing your core structure. The mycelium has been doing this for hundreds of millions of years, and it can teach us, if we slow down enough, to listen. Let's try something. An experiment in perception. Close your eyes if they're not already closed. Take a deep breath. Now imagine you're a tree. Your feet are roots extending down into the soil, slowly, gradually. You don't move, you don't rush, you just grow. Millimeter by millimeter, your roots extend, searching for water, for nutrients, for the right conditions. And as your roots spread, they encounter something. Thin threads, fungal hyphae. They're everywhere in the soil, waiting. The threads connect to your roots, gently, carefully. They wrap around the root tips and burrow inside, forming tiny structures called arbuscules. This is the interface, the meeting point between tree and fungus. And through this interface, information flows. Chemical signals, nutrients, warnings, resources. You're no longer alone, you're connected. part of a network that extends beyond you through the soil to other trees, other plants, other fungi. You feel the network, not as a thought, not as an image, but as a sensation, a sense of presence, connection, belonging. The network is vast, ancient, patient, and you are part of it now, a new node in an old system. The network welcomes you, slowly, in the way only a fungus can, by sharing resources, by offering support, by integrating you into the pattern, and you relax into it, because you're not carrying the burden alone anymore. The network will help. The forest will support you. All you have to do is grow, patiently, steadily, one season at a time. Feel that sensation for a moment, the feeling of being connected, supported, part of something larger. This isn't metaphor, this is biology. Every tree in a forest is connected through mycelium. Every plant in a meadow shares fungal partners. And you, human though you are part of the same system. You're made of the same elements. You breathe the same air. You're built from the same carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus. You're not separate from the forest. You're a different expression of the same fundamental processes. And that connection is still there, even if you can't feel it consciously. When you walk through a forest, your feet disturb the soil. Your presence changes the chemistry. The mycelium detects you. It doesn't know you're human, it doesn't recognize you as an individual, but it registers the change, the disturbance, the pattern, and in some small way, you become part of its data, part of the information it processes. You affect the network, and the network affects you. Not directly, not consciously, but through the air you breathe, the ground you walk on, the food you eat. You are always connected, even when you think you're alone. The network is there, beneath your feet, in the soil, in the air, in your body. You are part of it, and it is part of you. And maybe that's the most important realization of all. You're not isolated, you're not separate. You never were. You're a node in the planetary network, a pattern in the larger system, and that system supports you, breathes with you, exists with you. You're home. You've always been home. You just forgot for a while. Let's come back to the surface now. Gently, slowly. We've gone deep, into soil, into cells, into questions that don't have answers. And maybe that's okay. Maybe the point isn't to find answers. Maybe the point is to remember how to wonder. Children are good at wonder. They look at the world with fresh eyes. Everything is strange. Everything is new. Everything is miraculous. But we lose that as we age. We learn the names of things. We categorize, we explain. And in explaining, we lose the mystery. A tree becomes just a tree. Soil becomes just dirt. Fungi become just decomposers. The magic drains away. The world becomes mundane. But tonight you've seen differently. You've looked beneath the surface. You've considered the possibility that the world is stranger and more alive than you thought. And maybe for a moment, you felt that childhood wonder return. That sense of, what if? What if the forest is conscious? What if fungi are thinking? What if we're part of a planetary mind? These questions don't need answers. They need to be held, considered, wondered about. Because wonder is how we stay open, how we stay curious, how we avoid the trap of thinking we know everything. The scientists who made these discoveries, Suzanne Simard, Toshiyuki Nakagaki, all the mycologists and ecologists studying fungal networks, they're driven by wonder. They look at the world and ask why and how and what if. And they follow those questions into forests, into laboratories, into ideas that sound impossible. And they find answers that raise even more questions. That's how science works. Not by closing mysteries, but by opening them further. And in that opening, we find something precious. A sense that the world is vast, unknowable, endlessly fascinating. We find wonder, and wonder is what makes life worth living. Tomorrow when you wake up, try something. If you go outside, look down. Look at the ground beneath your feet, not just the surface. Imagine what's beneath. The network, the threads, the connections. Picture the mycelium spreading through the soil, linking roots, processing information, coordinating the ecosystem. You won't see it, but knowing it's there changes how you experience the place. The ground isn't just dirt, it's alive. Aware, maybe. Thinking, possibly. Processing information, definitely. And you're standing on it, part of it, connected to it. That awareness doesn't require belief. You don't have to decide whether fungi are conscious. You just have to acknowledge the possibility. And in acknowledging, you open yourself to a different relationship with the world. Not as a human standing on dead matter, but as one living system among many. one intelligence among others, humbler, more respectful, more curious. This is the practice of noticing, of paying attention, of remembering that the world is more than it seems, and that practice changes you gradually over time, like a mycelium growing through soil. Slow, patient, persistent, one small connection at a time. Let's settle into something soothing now. Let the big questions fade. Let your mind relax. You've been thinking hard, considering difficult ideas, challenging your assumptions about consciousness, intelligence, the nature of reality itself. That's exhausting, and it's okay to let it go now. Let the concepts drift like leaves falling from a tree. They land where they land. Some stick, some blow away. It doesn't matter. You don't have to remember everything. You don't have to solve anything. Just rest. And as you rest, let's think about patterns. Simple patterns, comforting patterns. The mycelium grows in patterns, fractals, each branch splitting into smaller branches and those into smaller still, infinitely complex but following simple rules. Breathe in. The air fills your lungs. Oxygen molecules diffusing across membranes. Simple chemical gradients, simple patterns. Breathe out. Carbon dioxide leaving your body, entering the air, eventually absorbed by plants, eventually processed by fungi. You're part of a pattern, a cycle. Carbon cycling through ecosystems, through bodies, through time. Nothing is wasted, nothing is lost. Matter moves from form to form. Energy flows, patterns persist. You are a pattern, temporary, but part of something permanent. The pattern continues, with or without you, but right now you're here. You're part of it, and that's enough, just to be part of the pattern. One node in the network, one thread in the web. Think about seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter, and spring again. The cycle repeats endlessly, patiently. The mycelium knows this rhythm. It has experienced thousands of cycles, tens of thousands. It grows in spring, processes in summer, prepares and waits in winter, and then spring returns, and the cycle begins again. There's comfort in that rhythm, in the predictability, in knowing that winter will end, that spring will come, that life continues. You're experiencing your own cycle right now, waking, active, tiring, sleeping, and tomorrow the cycle repeats. This is natural, this is right, this is how systems maintain themselves. Through rhythm, through cycles, through repetition. Don't fight it. Don't resist the tiredness. Let yourself move with the cycle. Your body knows what to do. It's done this every day of your life. It's practiced, skilled. Just let it happen. Let the cycle carry you from waking to sleeping, from day to night. The mycelium is doing the same thing on a slower scale, from season to season, from year to year. You're synchronized, both following rhythms, both part of larger patterns. Rest in that. Rest in the knowledge that you're not alone, not separate, not fighting against nature. You're moving with it, one breath at a time, one heartbeat at a time. Simple, natural, right? Let your awareness soften now. Let the boundaries blur. You don't need to track where you end and the world begins. That boundary is arbitrary anyway. Useful, but not real. Let it fade. Let yourself expand, not physically, but in awareness. Feel the air on your skin. That's the world touching you. You touching the world, no separation. Feel the surface beneath you, supporting you, holding you. The weight of your body pressing down, the firmness pressing back. You and the surface, connected, part of the same system, exchanging force, exchanging heat, no separation. And beyond that, the room around you, the building, the ground beneath the building, the soil, the mycelium, all connected, all part of the same continuous system. You're not in the world, you're of it, made from it, continuous with it. Let that sink in, let it dissolve the sense of isolation. You're part of the forest, part of the planet, part of the vast interconnected web of life, not metaphorically. Literally, through breath, through food, through the exchange of matter and energy, you're home. You've always been home, and home is safe. Home is vast. Home is ancient and patient and enduring. Rest in that. Rest in the network. Let it hold you. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to remember all the details. Let them go. Let the information settle where it will. Your mind will process it while you sleep, making connections, forming patterns. That's what minds do. Yours and the mycelium's, processing information, finding patterns, learning. But learning happens in rest, in the pauses between thoughts, in the quiet moments when you're not trying. So stop trying, stop thinking, let your mind drift like a leaf on water, floating, moving with the current, no resistance, no effort, just drifting. And as you drift, know that you're safe, held, supported by the network of your body, the network of your bed, the network of the building, the ground, the planet, the planet. Networks all the way down, all the way up, supporting you, holding you. You can let go. You can stop holding yourself together, stop maintaining the boundaries, stop working, just let go. The network will hold you. It always has, it always will. You're part of something that doesn't break, doesn't fail, doesn't end. The network persists, and you persist through it, in it, as it. So rest now, deeply, completely. Let the mycelium teach you how to be patient, how to be slow, how to trust the process, how to dissolve into the network and know that you'll emerge again. Different, maybe, but whole. Your breathing is slowing now. That's good. That's natural. That's your body moving towards sleep. Don't resist it. Welcome it. Sleep is when your brain consolidates memories, makes connections, integrates what you've learned. Sleep is when you become part of the network in a different way, when your conscious control releases and your body follows its own rhythms. Heartbeat, breath, the slow waves of sleep moving through your brain, patterns, natural patterns, the same patterns the mycelium follows: growth, rest, integration, growth again. You're doing what every living system does, moving between states, active and passive, waking and sleeping, doing and being. Right now, you're transitioning to being, to resting, to letting the world hold you while you let go. That's trust, deep trust, the kind that doesn't require thought, just surrender. And surrender is safe when you're part of the network, when you know that the system will continue, will support you, will bring you back when it's time. So surrender now, fully, completely. Let your muscles relax, starting with your face, your jaw, your neck. Let the tension drain away. Let it flow down your shoulders, your arms, your hands, like water running off leaves, just flowing away. Let your chest soften, your breathing deepen, your belly relax. Let your hips release, your legs grow heavy, your feet sink into the surface beneath you. Let your whole body become heavy, supported, held. You're not holding yourself up anymore. The network is holding you, the bed, the floor, the building, the ground, the planet, all of it supporting you. So you can rest completely, without effort. Your thoughts are slowing now, spacing out, like gaps between trees in a forest, widening. That's normal. That's how sleep begins. Thoughts become images, images become feelings. Feelings fade into nothing. Let it happen. Don't chase the thoughts. Don't try to hold on to awareness. Just drift, like a boat untethered from the shore, floating out into dark water. The darkness isn't scary, it's peaceful, restful. The darkness is where healing happens, where growth happens, where the mycelium thrives. Underground, in the dark, growing, learning, connecting. You're going there now, into your own darkness, your own underground. And it's safe, it's natural, it's where you need to be. Let the darkness hold you. Let it wrap around you like soft soil around roots, protective, nourishing. Home, you're going home now, to the place you go every night, the place of deep rest, of restoration, of renewal, the place where you're not a person with a name and a life and problems to solve, the place where you're just process, just pattern, just being. Let yourself become that. Let the structure of your identity dissolve. Let the boundaries fade. You don't need them here, in sleep, in darkness, in the network. Here, you're just part of the system, one node among billions, one thread in the web. And that's enough. That's perfect. Almost there now. Almost at the threshold. Your body is heavy. Your mind is quiet. Your breath is slow and deep. You're balanced on the edge between waking and sleeping, between conscious and unconscious. This is a sacred space, a liminal space, the place where transformations happen. Stay here for a moment, in the in-between, in the neither nor. Feel how peaceful it is, how weightless, how free. No decisions to make, no problems to solve, no identity to maintain, just existence, pure existence, being without doing. This is what the mycelium experiences all the time, this state of being without ego, without self. Just connection, just process, just being part of the flow. And you can rest here in this state for as long as you need. The network will hold you. Time will pass, hours will go by, but you won't experience them. You'll be suspended in the darkness, in the quiet, in the deep rest. And when it's time, when your body has rested enough, when your mind has processed what it needs to process, the network will release you, gently, gradually, like a seedling pushing up through soil toward light. You'll wake, refreshed, restored. Different, maybe, but whole. But that's later, that's tomorrow, that's not now. Now is for letting go, for surrendering, for trusting. Trust the network, trust your body, trust Trust the process. You've done this thousands of times. Your body knows how. It's practiced, skilled. Just let it do what it knows how to do. Let it carry you down into sleep, into darkness, into the deep rest where healing happens. Let go now, completely. Let the last threads of awareness fade. Let consciousness dissolve. Let yourself become part of the pattern, part of the rhythm, part of the network. You're safe, you're held, you're home. Rest now, deeply, completely. The mycelium is thinking its slow thoughts beneath you. The planet is breathing its slow breaths around you, like the universe is unfolding its slow patterns beyond you, and you are part of all of it, connected, integrated, whole. Rest in that knowledge, rest in that connection, rest in that peace. The network continues, the pattern persists, life flows on, and you are resting deeply in the heart of it all, in the ancient network, the first intelligence, the slow mind that has been thinking for longer than we can imagine, and it welcomes you into its rhythm, into its patience, into its endless, eternal now. Rest, sleep, be. In the darkness, there is no time, no past, no future, only the eternal present of the sleeping mind. And in that present, connections form, synapses strengthen, patterns emerge. Your brain is processing what you've learned, making sense of it, integrating it into your understanding of the world. Not consciously. You're not aware of this happening, but it's happening nonetheless. Like the mycelium growing through soil, invisible, patient, unstoppable. Your mind is growing, branching, making new connections between ideas you've never connected before, about consciousness, about intelligence, about what it means to be alive. And tomorrow, you might not remember the details. You might not recall the specific experiments or the names of the scientists, but you'll remember something deeper, a feeling, a sense, a knowing that the world is more alive than you thought, that intelligence takes forms you never imagined, that you're connected to something vast and ancient and patient, and that knowing will change how you move through the world. Subtly, gradually, you'll look at trees differently, at soil differently, at the ground beneath your feet. You'll remember that beneath every forest, every meadow, every patch of earth, there's a network, thinking its slow thoughts, processing its slow information, learning its slow lessons, and you'll feel connected to it, part of it, held by it. That connection will comfort you in moments of loneliness, in moments of fear, in moments when the world feels too harsh or too cold or too indifferent. You'll remember, you're not alone. You're part of the network, part of the pattern, part of the vast, interconnected web of life. And the network doesn't abandon its members. It supports them, feeds them, keeps them alive. You are supported, you are fed, you are kept alive. Not by your own effort alone, but by the system you're part of. The ecosystem, the planet, the web. Trust that, rest in that, know that, and sleep deeply, peacefully in the arms of the ancient network, the intelligence that preceded all others, the silent wisdom of the earth. Sleep now. The mycelium is dreaming its slow dreams, and you are part of that dream. Welcome. Rest. Sleep. The forest breathes, slowly in and out. Carbon dioxide and oxygen exchanged, balanced, maintained. The mycelium pulses slowly, resources flowing, information spreading, connections strengthening. Your heart beats slowly. Blood circulating, oxygen delivered, waste removed, all connected, all part of the same rhythm, the same pattern, the same vast, slow dance. Sleep deeper now, into the place where dreams dissolve, into the place where even the sense of self fades away, into the network, into the darkness, into the peace. You're held, you're safe, you're home in the ancient network, the first intelligence, the slow mind of Earth. Sleep, and know that when you wake, the world will still be here, still breathing, still growing, still connecting, and you will still be part of it forever, always connected. Rest, sleep, be part of the network, part of the pattern, part of the slow, eternal wisdom of the mycelium